now by a terrific group of reporters, including Tia Mitchell, who's in the halls of the Capitol with me every single day. You know, this feels a lot like what we saw in the fall. The two sides really dug in. That was a 43-day government shutdown. That was the entire federal government. And then we saw a couple of weeks ago, partial government shutdown that did not last nearly as long. Here, this could drag on for some time. It is a key agency. Yes, it's one agency, but it's a key agency, and it could have a significant impact.
So I do think Senator Britt's point that the parts of the Department of Homeland Security that would be the most impacted by this partial shutdown are not necessarily the parts that Democrats are mad at. And that creates kind of a little bit of political heartache, I think, on Democrats' side, because it is going to affect TSA agents, the Coast Guard, Secret Service, which again, FEMA is another big one. That being said, Democrats have a base that is saying, dig in. We are okay with shutting it down because we are very upset about the ICE enforcement. We're very upset that 2 American citizens were killed in the streets of Minneapolis. So I think that's the pain point right now. And for right now, Democrats are going to hold firm, but I don't know how long they'll be able to do so.
That's such a good point because, of course, there's a 53-47 Senate in order to pass any legislation. 60 votes, meaning at least 7 Democrats, probably 8 Democrats will be needed to pass legislation here. So that puts Chuck Schumer in a bit of a bind. We saw this happen to him time and time again last year over these shutdown attempts. How, if you're Schumer, do you navigate this? Because you have the base that Tia is talking about that is really dug in, wants them to fight, but he also has to compromise with the White House to reopen a key agency.
Ostensibly, to reach an outcome, that would be the only pathway to do, to actually make that happen. I think if you're Schumer, use my personal metric, which is what's the Angus King barometer, right? Which is Angus King is an independent who caucuses with the Democrats. Any deal that is made with a Republican Senate and a Republican White House, Angus King is going to have to be a yes on for Democrats. Angus King is a no right now. And as long as that's the case, Schumer feels good about where his entire caucus is at this moment. I think the difficulty here is FEMA's got billions right now that will give them some time. TSA is not going to be missing paychecks for another couple of weeks. ICE, CBP are funded because of the One Big Beautiful Bill law. So the pain points, the pressure points that spark deals or spark people to say, like, okay, we got to figure this out, which is primarily TSA. When is TSA actually going to start getting hit? That'll be the moment people realize that there's some pain and they need to get in the room. That's not coming right now. And Democrats, to Tia's point, I haven't heard from anybody who thinks if Angus King's not going, there's nobody else in the 47 that are going.
That's such a good point. I mean, we saw in the last shutdown, the reason why there was, in the fall shutdown, I should say, the reason why the deal was ultimately cut was because people were suffering these big travel delays and the like. So that's a key point. And then the key point here is, what will Trump do, right? Because Trump has not, when has Trump cut a deal with Chuck Schumer? Particularly on an issue like this, immigration is so central to his political identity. To have to compromise on this to reopen the government, that seems far-fetched.
It seems far-fetched, particularly when you look at the last year and, to your point, how central immigration enforcement has been to his campaign promise, to this agenda. We have seen some cracks, right? We have seen some softening. Tom Homan yesterday announcing this withdrawal of federal agents from Minneapolis. You saw the president, at least briefly, after the shooting of Alex Preti and the administration's messaging after, in the inflammatory statements you saw initially from in the wake of that shooting, you saw the president soften a bit. So you have seen the pressure from this immigration crackdown. By the way, increasingly bipartisan pressure, as well as some Republicans feeling that it's going overboard, impacting the White House in small ways. But when you look at these issues, unmasking immigration agents, revising, what warrants actually they can use to go, for these raids. Those are issues that when I talk to White House officials, they say they're not willing to budge on. Sanctuary city policies as well.
The judicial warrant's a big sticking point.
It's a huge sticking point here. I do think it's interesting, though, that Dems seem to be walking a fine line here. The negotiations aren't really about immigration policy. They're trying to frame this as a matter of almost the use of force. It's almost a law enforcement issue here. So whether that can also move the White House, I think will be interesting.
It's easy to just get numb to everything these days, and think that this is normal. Shutdowns are really not normal. They've become normal, but in the past and recent history, they didn't really happen. Just to look at the days of partial or full government shutdowns over the last several presidencies, really since one began. And when Jimmy Carter, that was a day-long shutdown. And then
look at this.
You've had Ronald Reagan had about 14 days. And then you look at it all the way down for Donald Trump. There was the 38 days of shutdowns in his first term, 47 days, and now it's going to be counting come this DHS shutdown.
Yeah.
Shows you the time that we're in.
It shows the time. Again, I think that when you poll voters, less and less voters on both sides say that compromise to get a deal done to keep government running is not as important to them as they want their elected officials to fight for the things they believe in, right? Even if it means gridlock. And so more and more we're hearing, the members of Congress are hearing from their base, we're okay with gridlock if it means you're fighting for the things that we're passionate about. And that's the difference. Whereas in maybe in years past, it was, hey, we think sometimes you're going to have to give a little, and I might not be as happy, but if that means our government is working and it's moving slowly, then that's what I want my elected officials to do. So it's that subtle shift in the base saying, fight. It goes back to the highly partisan nature of our politics. And so I think you can't have it both ways. I think the people at home need to understand that.
Yeah.
You can't have it both ways where you're mad at Chuck Schumer when he cuts a deal to end the shutdown, but then you also are saying, gosh, these shutdowns, why can't Congress get it together?
And speaking of voters, I want you to listen to some focus group sound from our friends at Engage Us talking to Arizona voters. These are voters who supported Biden in 2020. And
Boy, I didn't realize when my brother and I put this Purple Heart out here representing the Purple Hearts Dragons Memorial Veterans Memorial Center out here. When we put on there, the war is over, but the fight had just begun. I didn't realize what kind of a fight this was really going to be, and that was 9 years. Basically, seemed like we hung that in 2016. It'd be 10 years now. This year that the Purple Heart's been up there pertaining to the war's been over, but the fight has just begun. I didn't realize the substantialness of just exactly how much of a fight that it was going to be. And it's not just a fight pertaining to the Americans, but it's a fight to all the true liberals out there, the patriots out there, that's fighting for fairness. It's fighting for liberty. It's fighting for democracy.
The aggression with tactics on the interior is very problematic. When you see people say defund or abolish ICE, very problematic. And so who can win that kind of rhetorical battle over the course of the next couple of days or couple of weeks, depending on how long this goes, will, I think, dictate the eventual outcome of this shutdown fight.
It also explains why Trump has pulled back in some regard, because people view Republicans and independents says that they believe that some of these tactics have gone too far. All right, coming up next, a stunning new Wall Street Journal report that answers the question, what happens when Christine goes missing? Plus, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez goes global in Munich.
I'm surprised she ain't in jail. I really am. I'm surprised she ain't in jail. Let's see here what's coming on right here. This is regarding that deal out there in Arizona, I guess.
Case operate off of batteries. And just because he pulled it off the wall doesn't mean it went dead. And I have not heard that they physically recovered the actual thing, the camera itself, which means it would have still been broadcasting. If he put it in the car, you might have gotten a look at the car if they can undo that code. You might even get audio of him talking or something, or whatever happened in terms of, what you could hear. So it only would be limited by when it goes out of range of the Wi-Fi. The limiting principle there is not the camera, it's the strength of the Wi-Fi signal. And it's usually 100, 150 feet. So all of this goes to the idea of, can we find that car? Are there tire tracks? Did you pick something up nearby on a camera? And that's what you're hoping for relative to a vehicle.
Yeah, the inside footage is key. And we know Kash Patel's statement from back earlier in the week, I believe it was Tuesday, referenced multiple removed recording devices, plural. So my question has always been, was more than just the front door removed, that camera, Charles?
Yeah, Paul, I want to go back to the the most recent thing from TMZ and the use of the word rat. It seems to me that that's really, if indeed this person knows who the perpetrator is, it suggests a close either friendship or kinship to the perpetrator, and or maybe someone in the Guthrie family. I mean, as a law enforcement, I know that kind of word has to sort of say, okay, maybe it gives us a clue as to where we should look, or maybe where we haven't been looking.
Yeah, so, I mean, look, let's tease this out. If the letter is bogus, and I think most of us feel that it likely is, okay, then we don't need to pay attention to it. But let's say it is legitimate, and of course, as law enforcement, you got to admit any possibility here and make sure that you're looking. So they've offered this larger reward, which many of us have been asking for a long time here, because you want to incentivize people around the situation. Hey, I think I have a possible here, and you know what, 50,000, he's saying he wants to go underground, he needs it to live. I don't know where he's going to live that long on $50,000. I mean, it's not a huge amount of money. Now it's 100. That's more than the single Bitcoin. And the idea that he doesn't want to be a rat, you know what? The truth of the matter is that perps, criminals, they'll give up their mothers for $100,000. So this idea that he's adhering to some code of honor, I'm not buying it.
Yeah, and I just want to let our audience know that any moment we will have remarks from President Trump. He went wheels up on Marine One at 12:05 p.m. Eastern Time. So we have what they like to call chopper talk, some back and forth about Kristi Noem and CPI numbers. We will play that the moment that we get it. Paul, looking back at this note, it feels like we are a long way off from where we were 1 week ago. We were all thinking about this ransom note that TMZ had.
There is no honor among thieves. Somebody that has done something like this don't deserve to be honored. Whoever it is out there that knows something about this kidnapping needs to fess up immediately, because not only are you not going to be looked upon as being a snitch or a narc, but you're going to be looked upon as being a decent, good human being. And if you don't turn the evidence in that then you become an accessory to the crime. You can go to jail for not speaking out.
The genealogical DNA that I was asking about ended up being really dispositive, one of the real pointers in that case, but it takes time because you end up with a pool of people and you got to check through it. The added metric in this one that I think makes people so frustrated is that it's an abduction, and Nancy is, we all want to believe, still out there alive. And so everybody is hoping against hope that you're going to hear from the ransomers here, and that's, I think, the added pressure that everybody wants a quick solve, because you have an 84-year-old woman who reportedly needs life-saving medication within 24 hours, and obviously we're well past that. And just to that point, there aren't that many medications that are that sort of absolutely necessary. There's type 1 diabetes, there's some heart failure medications. We know she had the pacemaker. So I'm wondering if that might have been, not an exaggeration, but maybe a little over-dramatized. Did she need it to live? Or is it something that is safer to have? My point being, we're all operating on the assumption that she's still out there, and if we can get to this guy, we can find her.
And Donna, as frustrating as it might be for the public, you've worked on a lot of these cases. Each case is its own case. Yeah. The Tyler Robinson case, for example, there were so many eyes on Tyler Robinson. There was DNA. There was a lot more evidence there right in front of investigators, which is why it was a little more abbreviated in finding Tyler Robinson.
Yes. Yeah, here.
Hidden in plain view.
No, they don't. What we have this video in front of the house. We have the little pieces of evidence that they found. We've seen the blood, but there's no true motive here. Because again, if you're looking at these letters and you're not believing that these letters are true, then what was that, right? Is that somebody that's just jumping in to sort of join this hoax? If it was a true kidnapping, you would think that there would have been multiple communications. The communications would have gone directly to the family. It's not like it's hard to find.
And that's a law against that too. If whoever is doing this, putting out information saying that they know something about it, and it's just a hoax, then you're lying to a federal agent, and that in and of itself is a crime. This is a very, very sensitive situation right here, and I'm really surprised that it's aired so much on mainstream TV media regarding how sensitive of a subject that it actually is. I realize that to some degree, law enforcement does have to depend upon the general public in in making claims or whoever that may know something, but you got to realize whenever they put themselves out here on a limb like this, these are not normal. These are not normal times of people that's going to speak out and try to jump on board with this, thinking that it's just going to be nonchalant, because it won't be. I guarantee you. And whoever the judge that gets a hold of this, regardless whether she lives or she don't live, as far as I'm concerned, to put this kind of strain and to put this kind of money on a situation like this person should get life without parole. At the least, that's providing that she's living. And if she's not living, if she's done already dead, whoever has done it, they should get the capital offense immediately towards death. Because anybody that's going to do an elderly person, there's a certain set of guidelines and laws pertaining to elderly people that you're not supposed to intimidate. You're not supposed to fraud them. You're not supposed to take money from them. That fits into a whole new category of somebody that's just out here basically in the 20s or the 30s or the 40s versus somebody in their 60s, 70s, and their 80s. It goes into a completely more serious charge. A lot of people don't know that.
Just quickly, another frustration is, what is the motive here? To Donna's point, if there's no ransom back and forth, what is the motive for taking an 84-year-old woman?
And as this investigation
They're
has
evil.
unfolded,
They're mean.
think about in the first moments,
That's the
a
motive.
missing 84-year-old woman who did not show up to, view church. Oh, I think we're getting the wrap now, so it's on time for the president.
All right, President of the United States here.
Good financial numbers, very low inflation. We brought costs way down, and the numbers were surprising, except to me, they weren't surprising. So the inflation numbers just announced, as you know, are way down, and we have it back in track. We had the worst inflation in the history of our country, and now we have very modest inflation, which is what you want to have.
I got news for the president. It ain't too modest whenever you got people out there that's struggling right now towards making decisions of whether or not they're going to eat, whether or not they're going to pay their bills, or whether or not they're going to have to substitute towards not paying for their medication. I don't know what planet did he come off of pertaining to the inflation over here, but I guarantee you just about every item that I can go to Walmart and pick up, regardless whether it's in the food supply chain or it's over in the regulars, it has gone up on average between 15 to 30% on every item. There's very few items out there that's the same, and none of them has went down. Not unless it's on clearance. None of them has went down whenever it comes to the retail. So I don't know what he's talking about, because he just basically blabbing off a bunch of stuff, I guess, that his predecessors want to hear or something. I don't know.
What about it? Don't worry about it.
Do you still have a veto on Nouri al-Maliki to become the Iraqi prime minister?
We're looking at a prime minister. We're going to see what's going to happen. We've got some ideas on it, but in the end, everybody needs the U.S. Everybody needs us.
Are you planning to hold anyone accountable for the shutdown in El Paso? The second aircraft carrier that you decided to send. Talk about why you made that choice.
Well, in case we don't make a deal, we'll need it. If we don't have a deal, we'll need it. If we have a deal, we could cut it short. It'll be leaving very soon. We have one out there that just arrived. If we need it, we have it ready. A very big force.
Negotiations, do you still demand Zelensky has to hold elections before summer?
Well, Zelensky's going to have to get moving. Russia wants to make a deal, and Zelensky's going to have to get moving. Otherwise, he's going to miss a great opportunity. He has to move.
Mr. President, are you going to hold anyone accountable for El Paso? Are you personally involved in negotiations?
Well, I will, but you have to remember, if you look at Homeland Security, if you look at what they've done, if you look at what ICE has done at Border Patrol, we have the safest border in the history of our country. Nobody comes in other than if they come in legally. If you remember, just a little while ago, a year and a half ago, for a 4-year period, they allowed 25 million people in our country. Many of these people were murderers and drug dealers. a horrible thing. We've gotten a lot of them out. We now have the best records in the history of our country on crime. It was just announced. Our crime numbers are the best in 125 years. So I am here to protect law enforcement and our great police and ICE and Border Patrol and everybody. I'm here to protect them because they're protecting us. And the job they've done is incredible.
Do you believe Prime Minister Netanyahu will receive a pardon?
I do think so, yes.
Are you officially known, Mr. President?
Yeah, I do.
Mr. President.
We have safe borders. We have low crime numbers. The answer is
Mr. President, do you think anyone should be held accountable?
You mean the way it happened? Yeah. People learn. People learn.
People who should learn. Greenland doesn't want Europe controlling them anymore. What's your message to them?
Well, I think Greenland's going to want us, but we get along very well with Europe. We'll see how it all works out. We're negotiating right now for Greenland.
Mr. President, do you think the cartels are at all involved in Nancy Guthrie's case or another nation state potentially?
You can't say that yet. It's a little bit early, but it's somebody either knew what they were doing very well or they were rank amateurs. Either way, it's not a good situation.
Mr. President, do you think Sean Duffy should be held accountable?
Well, I have a great relationship with them. If it wasn't for me, they'd be paying 2% and not paying. Instead, they're paying 5% and they're paying. We have a very good relationship with NATO.
How confident are you that negotiations with Iran will be successful?
I think they'll be successful, and if they're not, it's going to be a bad day for Iran. Very bad. We're talking, but we have to protect law enforcement. ICE has done a phenomenal job. Border Patrol, we have a closed border for the first time in history. We have to protect law enforcement, our police, our Border Patrol, ICE, and others in law enforcement. And I'm very much, look, I know what they want. I know what they can live with. The Democrats have gone crazy. They're radical left lunatics. That's why their cities are so unsafe. The blue cities are the cities that are unsafe. So we have to protect our law enforcement. Well, we have a very good relationship with the president of Venezuela. As you know, we're working together very closely. We have our big oil companies going in. They're going to be taking out the oil and selling the oil for a lot of money, and Venezuela is going to get a big part of that money. And the relationship we have right now with Venezuela is, I would say, a 10. And the biggest beneficiary will be the people of Venezuela.
On Venezuela, will you be recognizing Delcy Rodriguez's government as the official government of Venezuela?
Well, right now we have done that. We're dealing with them, and really, right now they've done a great job. Delcy's done a very, very good job, and the relationship is strong. The oil is coming out, and a lot of money is being paid for oil by other nations, and we're taking care of it. We're refining it, and we're the only one that has the capability to refine it. Right now, the relationship with Venezuela is as good as it could be.
When are you planning to visit Venezuela, sir?
I'm going to make a visit to Venezuela.
Wait.
We haven't decided. Are you from Venezuela?
From Colombia, sir. We share a border with Venezuela.
We just had a good meeting with you.
The president of Colombia. And on the Munich Security Conference, what is your message to Europe?
I think the only message is we have a great relationship with NATO. We're a very powerful part of NATO. The people that are the heads of the countries, the various countries that we're talking about, they're all friends of mine.
Seems like the closer it gets to that helicopter, the louder the noise comes from the background. want to make a comment on what he said a while ago, that they need us. In the right frame of mind, yeah, they do need us. But at the same time, a lot of these that's your military. I mean, ambulance. That's your ambulance helicopter. Excuse me. Anyways, what I was going to say is, yes, these other countries need us. But at the same time, a lot of them could look at us not only in the form of being a bully, in being too overzealous, but they could actually look at us towards trying to weaponize our power. That could be a conflict of interest with some of your other superpowers. I realize that competition is competition. I realize that everybody is, striving towards wanting to, get the brass ring or whatever. But it has to be some sort of fairness across the board. I'm going to bring up ICE towards what they've done in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The people, by and large, sees that as it being unfair in their tactics, in the way that they went in, with them all being basically masked up to the degree that you can't identify them, and using that type of aggression. By and large, most of the people in America see what ICE done in that particular episode as it being a bad deal. They don't agree with it. It's in the form of it being not just being Big Brother, but being a bully to the effect of weaponizing it. Then again, there's other people that see it as, well, they was breaking the law. Their leadership knows that they was breaking the law, pertaining to having a sanctuary city. And I didn't know this until the other day. They claim that there's something like 80 different sanctuary towns, sanctuary communities, sanctuary cities, sanctuary states, whatever, all over the United States. I didn't realize that. That's a lot. If that remark is true, that's a lot. And those are people that's deliberately defying and breaking our federal law because it's against the law to come into an America towards not being properly vented. It's against the law.
Might have happened. I just posit on both sides, meaning when law enforcement first responded to a missing 84-year-old woman, there might be some connotations associated with that. Remember from the beginning we said, no, it's not dementia. There's certain questions that you ask when you, my point is, respond to a scene. You're not responding with the same level of care and action that you would when you know that you're coming into a homicide or a suspected death, etc. And then same thing with that inverts, because then it remember they said we discovered a crime scene. Now this is an abduction. It can morph into things. Same too, perhaps, with the abductors. Was that inadvertent that it was Savannah's mother? Was it inadvertent something that happened on the, did they come expecting there to be some sort of action and then take her not meaning to? Was it a spur of the minute decision? Once they had her, did they expect to return her quickly? And all of a sudden, there's like these decision trees. So you don't know, my point is, how much of this was planned, how much of this was purposeful, and how much was perhaps split-second decisions that had incredible consequences, clearly for the perps, but as investigators, they are managing it as they are realizing the steps that have occurred.
Yeah, and Donna, of course, the state has the police power. They essentially, lead an investigation within their state. But it is interesting just observing the press. I can't remember my time at the podium that I was often asked about local crime cases. It is interesting. It wasn't just Jackie. It was other reporters asking about Nancy Guthrie. They're looking to the president for answers.
Yes. Well, I think they're looking to the president for answers because they're getting very bad answers from the local jurisdiction. And you're right, Emily. These jurisdictions should work together. But normally, this would be a state charge or state crime to investigate until charges were brought. And then it would be determinative if they're federal crimes or state crimes, because just a murder in a state is a state case. As we saw with Luigi Mangione, the only thing that made it federal was that additional layer that the federal court said doesn't exist. So this is a charge that belongs in state court. So the jurisdictional issue is often determined after charges are brought. So because this is a situation where we're trying to determine what the crimes are, you would think that if you're the local law enforcement, you'd say, we'll take all the help we can get. The world is watching us. To your point, they're asking the president's press secretary about it. You would think you would want to do everything you can do to make sure that you can give answers and say, bring in whatever resources we can get to help find this woman. And you would think that the Guthries would want that as well.
Indeed. And, Charles, he was also asked about DHS funding, because we know while ISIS funded, the rest of DHS isn't.
And I'm sure they do want that, but at the same time, they don't want to turn it into some sort of media frenzy, like it's some sort of Comcast, whatever. Stay tuned, and we'll keep you informed, like it's some sort of a show or something. And if you don't watch, whenever you have this kind of media attention, it can actually turn into something like that very, very quick. And maybe it don't come into play towards what the actual primary media is doing or are not doing, but it's those that grab a hold of the case. And I've seen this already on social media. They grab a hold of the case and they act like that they're editing some sort of a show or some sort of a movie, and keeping their viewers stay tuned. Stay tuned. It's like some kind of a show. And this is really, really crucial pertaining to people's lives here, that should be held in a very, very delicate type arena.
The polls, of course, it's obviously way too early for 2028 polls, but we'll still talk about them. This is inside politics after all, but there were some.
It's sad how, but just about everything in the United States becomes politicalized, or it becomes commercialized. And of course, we got social media to thank for that, because now there's so much open, so much openness about information. But the bad thing about the openness of information, you don't know whether or not it's false information or real information. You don't know a lot of times whenever you watch a certain particular link, if that's recently that just happened, or if it's something that may have happened 2 or 3 years ago, because they don't put a time stamp on it towards exactly whenever it happened. And to me, that should be improved, because it causes a great deal of confusion in people. It causes anxiety. Whenever people see that, they don't know, my God, is this really happening is all at once? Is all this happening all at once? You know what I'm saying? And it just creates that much more anxiety in people's lives.
It's okay for people quietly praying outside an abortion clinic, but it's not okay, but this is okay.
Yeah, well, you don't parse it unless you're a hypocrite. So, you're right. I mean, the conduct and the words are much worse. Time, place, and manner are kind of the key to First Amendment type conduct. And here, it's indisputed. And by the way, Minnesota, of all places, ought to be a little more sensitive to protecting people in church, children in church, after the Assumption slaughter or the murders that took place in Minnesota back in August. So, end of the day, I mean, Abby Lowell will put up a good defense. There'll be some First Amendment challenges. They'll challenge the FACE Act. And it's amazing how people that love the FACE Act for going after quietly praying people on the sidewalk are suddenly hardcore Federalists that think that it doesn't reach the conduct in this church. Political position, not really a legal one, though.
Well, Don Lemon probably enjoying this moment of 15 minutes. We also know the court is allowing him to travel outside the country. He's got a trip planned for France this summer. So Don Lemon, former journalist, now trying to say he is a journalist. We'll see how it all holds up, Jim. It is good to have you.
Good to see you.
And what's wrong with that? I mean, whenever I went out west, I had to follow under the pretense of being basically an independent journalist investigator. That was the only leadway that I could have, because I didn't have a whole body of people that was in behind me towards actually becoming a certified legal investigator. Even if you're a private investigator, you still got certain criteria that you got to go through, and you still got to be bonded through certain aspects, to where if you get in certain situations and somebody winds up getting hurt or gets killed, you can be liable for the situation that you have branched off into. But as long as you're an independent journalist working independently, they can't do nothing about that under the statutes that right now is current in our laws. Now, they may change that based upon how that they are attacking that journalist, which I think it's kind of like what happened to me personally whenever Martin, Tennessee wanted to come after me towards me passing out Bible literature and charge me for falsifying files, which basically puts me under the shadows, or it did at that time, put me under the shadows of somebody that has the potential in being a homegrown terrorist, or somebody that that is doing stuff unlawfully. And all I was doing at the time was passing out Bible literature, and I made mention to a pickles teller, in which I thought that was kind of, I guess the right word would be ironic. Just recently, within the past 2 or 3 weeks, we had an officer that was slain here in Weakley County, Tennessee, basically that fumigated right there in pickles. I thought that was kind of odd or unique, strange that my event happened in Martin, Tennessee in 2005 toward being charged with falsifying files while I was passing out Bible literature to a pickles teller, and then all of a sudden this episode come up. So I kind of thought that was kind of strange or odd for that to have worked its way out that way, because it kind of at first it kind of reminded me of bad karma. I ain't gonna lie to you. Whenever I first heard of it and heard of where it happened at, I thought, wow, that's kind of strange that would have happened right there in Martin, Tennessee, and it happened with the same location that I was at in 2005.
Yeah, speaking with PCE, by the way, everybody know what PCE is in the audience? It's a measure of inflation that the Fed uses. We hear CPI a lot in the popular press, but PCE is really what you guys use as a more reliable indicator. Is that fair?
Well, it's what the Federal Reserve has chosen to. It's what the Federal Reserve has chosen to target.
Yeah, the 2%.
Yeah.
And one of the audience submitted questions asked about owner equivalent rent and the weighting of that. Is that overstating inflation? So in that measure, they don't know what it costs if you own your house. So they put in a factor called owner equivalent rent, and it's a calculation, and it's inherently not accurate. But do you have a view on that or a perspective?
Yeah, I do. I mean, look, the problem with inflation is that it's a sausage that has to get made, and I can tell you the price of a pound of coffee or a barrel of oil or an AI GPU. But inflation is the change in the general price level, and the general price level is an abstraction. It's not concrete. It doesn't exist. It's got to be constructed by government statisticians who have a very, very challenging task in front of them. And there's 1,000 methodological choices they have to make with no clear right answer. And so as such, it's very difficult to conceptualize exactly what inflation means. How you incorporate housing is a very complicated.
But you also got to put into the equation pertaining to inflation, supply and demand. I'll put it this way: right before COVID hit, God had already done touched my spirit in identifying that something horrible was coming around the corner pertaining to a pandemic. I started paying close attention to the masks that you could buy at that time in any pharmaceuticals. I think it was like 50 masks for like $3 or $4. Whenever COVID took off, those masks disappeared. At first, you couldn't even buy no mask because it went basically to primary care pertaining to the doctors and nurses. But whenever they did go back out online toward being availability, toward getting the same box, it wasn't no $4 or $5 a box. It was more like $12 or $14 a box. So you got to put into the equation, whenever you're talking about inflation, it's all based around supply and demand, based around the need of that time frame that people are going through. It's economics that you got to kind of sit and halfway, figure out that, hey, if they don't have a good enough supply for the demand, they're going to start jabbing the consumer. And 9 times out of 10, it's always the consumer that takes it on the chin. Just like right now, It's the consumer that's taking it on the chin whenever it comes to all these tariffs that Donald Trump is trying to tell everybody that certain countries are paying for, in which they may be. But on the other hand, it's we, the people, that's paying for it, because you know what? The price of gas here in Northwest Tennessee basically hadn't changed in the past year or so. It's basically been very stable. It ain't like it went up to $4 or $5 a gallon. It ain't like it went way down to $1.50 a gallon. It's basically been the same. But yet now, every time I go to the retailers, those prices are up between 15 and 30% on average. Some of them may be up actually 50% or 100%. In other words, you may pay twice as much money for a piece of plywood today than what you would before pre-COVID. And I'm not exaggerating. Everything is based around supply and demand. And if you've got more of a demand and you got a supply, people start taking advantage of those poor people called the consumers, which is people like us, that Donald Trump don't have no idea about the consumer, because he really has never been a consumer. He's always been a rich man. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. So whenever he can tell you that the inflation is down or the inflation has stayed the same, he don't know. He's never been down here on ground zero towards understanding what it is to survive and what it is to have to make family decisions of whether or not you're going to buy your daughter or your son an extra pair of shoes, or you're going to have to do without your medication or keep the lights on. He's never had to deal with those problems.
History would not have died. And I'm including some mayors that were considered the worst in the history of the city. So but they were not.
Well, I just had to ask. They were not communist and inhuman. Yeah, well, you ran the city, and obviously a long other list of things you did in your very illustrious and impeccable career there. So Mayor Giuliani.
I can also use eggs for an example. I can also use toilet paper as an example. I can use several examples based around supply and demand that whenever something hiccups into the system, it can have a profound effect upon the inflation of what the average consumer was paying before versus what the average consumer is paying today. It can have a profound effect. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see these things occurring right in front of your very eyes. And God only knows what it's like in Honduras. God only knows what it's like in Venezuela. God only knows what it's like right now in Russia or Ukraine towards seeing the price hikes that's going on, or even in Africa or China or wherever, or India or wherever, or Canada or wherever. God only knows what's going on pertaining to the money people, the big people, taking advantage of the small people, taking advantage of the people that's already suffering because they're unfortunate towards not being as stable as what a lot of people are, as being as wealthy or rich as what a lot of people are, and people take advantage of them. Now, they claim that price gouging in America is against the law. They claim that price gouging is against the law. In other words, if it comes a major hurricane, and I've used this illustration before, if it comes a major hurricane down in Florida, and I go down there with a whole truckload of ice, and instead of me selling big things of ice for $4 to $5 a bag, I start charging $15, $20, maybe $25 a bag. Guess what? According to the laws of the land, they can arrest me. Why? Because I'm taking advantage of the consumer. I'm price gouging. Well, you can look at what the retailers are doing right now. I don't care if it's going to Lowe's and buying hardware or whatever. I was very disappointed this year whenever it come to the deals on Black Friday that they use as a selling tool day after, I think it's day of Thanksgiving. I was very disappointed in Lowe's in how that they marketed a lot of their items that to me wasn't even worthwhile of going in there and looking at. I'm going to bring up one other thing right now pertaining to what I recently had done. Fortunately, I prayed. I've been praying about this now for 4 days and 4 nights. And then I'm going to go outside and I'm going to show you something else real quick. I've been praying about this situation. This is on account number ending in 4067. I'll just go ahead and tell you the whole number sequences. It's 6019-1839-8303-4067. This is pertaining to a bill that I got at Aspen Dental, basically pulling 14 teeth and rejuvenating my mouth to the degree of getting dentures. The type of insurance that I had was some very, very good insurance that wound up paying $5,000, but yet now at the end of the day, they claimed that there was still $2,633.49 lacking. Because it was such of an amount, I was given this little piece of paper right here called flexible financing, and over here you'll see where it talks about a 12-month plan, 0% interest, talks about an 18-month plan, but then over here 48-month plan, 60-month plan, 20% interest, 19% interest. If you miss one payment or are late on one payment, it automatically falls into a different category of now being charged 29% interest. And I'm pretty sure that'd be 30% interest, or maybe even 33% interest. Because it was such of an amount, $2,600 something, and I don't have $2,600 something, I went with this plan because I was misled in believing the amount of money that it was. Afterwards, they figured out that they had overcharged. They had overcharged that flexible financing plan $1,124.70. They had to go in and reequate this, redo the whole thing. After they got through doing all that, we submitted your request, credit bureau, 60 days, and then over here it says, I am pleased to let you know that you have been credited this amount of money one time. Okay, so that leaves a balance of basically $1,400 something that my insurance did not pay on Aspen Dental. I call up various people and I'm like, you know what? I was misled, because if I knowed that the amount of money was going to be $1,400 something, I would have went with this plan, in which this was the original plan that I was going to go with anyways, because it's 0% interest as long as you make the payments on time for 18 months. Over here, you automatically get charged 19% interest, but it stretches it out longer. I called Aspen Dental and I told them that I had made contact with these people right here, flexible financing, care credit, and that they would not buckle pertaining to the contract. They said the only way that you could divert around this contract that has already been in play is that you would have to get Aspen Dental to go in and pay that $1,400 something off, and then reapply it back over here to the 18-month plan. So I figured I was screwed. Well, I prayed and prayed and prayed. Yesterday, I made a telephone call, and luckily I got the right telephone number and calling the headquarters out of New York. I got a telephone call a while ago from a young lady that worked for Aspen Dental that wanted to know what the problem was. She said, well, we understand that you have contacted this particular finance agency. Let us give it a try and see if we can do anything with it. Well, guess what? God answered my prayers, because she called me back probably within 15 minutes. She said, Mr. Jackson, we've changed it over. They've changed it over to this plan right here, 18-month plan over here. That way you do not get charged anywhere from 19 to 33% interest. I didn't even know that stuff like this existed, because it fringes on shark loaning money $1 on $1. I didn't even know anything like this existed, but as far as I'm concerned, I was misled, and because I was misled, they went ahead and favored and worked in my favor towards having it changed. As I said a while ago, whenever it comes to people like Donald Trump and other very, very wealthy, rich people, and I'm not talking about all of them right now, I'm talking about the majority of them. Whenever it comes to people being in that type of league, by and large, they have no idea what survival out here to the fittest actually means whenever it comes to people having to make these harsh, rational decisions in having to do without or not, or having to pay for one thing and not pay for the other. I got a guinea out here. I don't know if he thinks he's king of the walk or what the deal is, but he likes to chirp and let himself be known. They've done a remarkable job out here in behind me, or in front of me. I guess it would be in behind me. This would be looking at the south, towards going in and shaving off a great deal of the high places and filling in the low places and putting in basically levees right there where you got controlled water flow involving massive flooding. But what I was wanting to show you was, if you look at this shed right here that's attached to this other shed that my dad got, I think it was in Kenton, Tennessee, that he got this, and he put it on a trailer and he brought it all the way back from Kenton on a trailer. Him and my brothers did. This particular unit right here is actually a pretty fair unit. Pretty sound. It's got a sound flooring in it. And because of different situations that I've been in with depression, losing my brother, etc., I haven't had time to really focus a lot on this particular building, but I'm going to have to tear all this down right here, every bit of it, and either put another lean-to on it or maybe enclose it. I don't know, but I'll have to do that later. This is the camper shell that was on my truck during the time that Oklahoma City, Oklahoma decided that they was going to put a bomb in the back of it and blow it up and blow the windows out of it and then wouldn't pay for it. That's the reason why I put digging in Proverbs 28 and 10. If you look up Proverbs 28 and 10, it talks about how people that dig in the name of the Lord, that eventually bad karma will happen and it will come back and haunt them. But what I was going to show you right here, because I know that the weather was going to turn freaky on me, and I know the vulnerability of this particular roof over here that was in such of a bad shape, I had to go in and put these poles up right here. Okay, there's a pole there, there's a pole there, there's a pole over there, there's a pole over there, another pole back over there, a pole, 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 pole. You might be saying, my God, what are you doing? Well, it's basically a death trap in a way, especially if you had 2, 3, 4 inches of ice that this top would never support it. Look at that right there. See what I'm saying? Look at that right there. Look at that. Look at that. So this summer I'm gonna have to go in and tear this all down, but I didn't want it to fall down because I got a lawnmower in here and a couple other things that most people would call junk. But once more, the wealthy, the fortunate people, they don't have no idea what survivalist is all about whenever it comes to people having to do certain things just to be able to maintain their life structure. They have no idea. So whenever Donald Trump gets on TV and he talks about the inflation being the same or going down, he's lying. Because I know for a fact everything today in comparison to pre-COVID has went up extremely. 15 to 30%, maybe even more. I just can't believe that people get on national TV and just say stuff like that, knowing that the stuff that they're saying is incorrect. The Purple Hearts Dragons Veterans Memorial out here, my brother and I started this. This was the Purple Heart that I wanted to show you, that my brother helped me to mount. I think it was in 2016, before he passed away in 2017. And as I was saying a while ago, pertaining to this memorial site, in honor of all our veterans, pertaining to our Army personnel, pertaining to my dad, James Robert Jackson, that fought in World War II along with his brother and thousands of other men and women, is that when my brother and I put this Purple Heart up here, the battle is over, but the fight has just begun in honor of our veterans. I had no idea of how intense that the fight was going to be in the past 10 years. I had no idea. In the past 10 years, I've lost my only living remaining sibling, David Jeffrey Jackson. Out of all the anxiety and the stress and basically the turmoil, the torture that he was having to go through out here, basically he had went through so much of it that I think it had a strong influence on him going to work one night and at the age of 56 and going to bed, never waking up and seeing the sun rise again. Then I lost my son about 4 or 5 months ago in a major accident towards him trying to better his life and going out west and taking on a project towards making some money for his family. Like I said, whenever it comes to survival, whenever it comes to people just maintaining, not getting ahead, but just maintaining, these rich people have no idea the extent of what people has to go through on a realization world. And I couldn't even begin to think of how bad it would be in some of these other countries. But this country right here has really diminished itself pertaining to what the politicians have done or didn't do that they should have done, going way back, that now we're seeing the consequences of on a day-to-day, everyday level. And it's really sad. It's really sad that they've let it get this far out of hand. The only thing that I can do is remain dug in, make videos like I'm making now, and praying every day, that God Almighty would change this around to the degree that we will see peace, love, and prosperity on levels that I could only begin to imagine 30 plus years ago, that now is just a very dim speck of hope in it ever occurring. I just pray and hope that God will look down upon to America the same as Jesus Christ looked down upon to the crowd as he was hanging from the old rugged cross, realizing how far in left field that the people had become. I just pray to God that God will have mercy on all of us in the same aspect of, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Especially the way that the Jubilees Jesus Christ Windmill Ministries has been rejected here in Northwest Tennessee for the past 30 plus years. And the whole time my message was a message of love, grace, forgiveness, mercy, peace out of the King James Version Bible. For society to have turned on an anointed man of God simply because they didn't like the message coming from the messenger speaks volumes about what type of people that it is that would be willing to do that to a person. Especially in the degree of trying to make me out to be a homegrown terrorist. That began in 2005 in Martin, Tennessee, right here in Weakley County, Northwest Tennessee. All I can do is remain steadfast in the message that God has given unto me to give to society, and to tell in my testimony what has occurred, when it occurred, where it occurred, why it occurred, and to continue to believe in the Lord Jesus Christ that one day God, working through God's people, would turn it around. Just like that telephone call that I made yesterday, praying immensely for 3 days about that bill, realizing that today I seen a little bit of light coming in because Aspen Dental took it upon to themselves by trying to make things right. And I just wanted to correspond with that in a degree of me saying that I appreciate what Aspen Dental has taken the ambition of doing for me. Thank you. God bless America, and God bless our troops. God bless our endeavors towards which way that we go from this moment on, where we go, how we go. In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, I hope that you've got something out of this particular message today in response towards giving God and the Son and the Holy Spirit all glory, honor, and praise. Thank you, and shalom.